Ever find yourself replaying a conversation or a mistake or some worry over and over again in your head? Like a song stuck on repeat that you just can't turn off? It's a feeling we've all had. Well, it turns out there's some deep science behind why our brains get caught in these loops and what it actually costs us. So let's dive into the overthinking trap.
All right, let's start with a pretty wild statistic. Researchers found that we spend about half, a full 50% of our waking hours thinking about something other than what we're actually doing. And here's the real kicker. Most of the time, this mind wandering actually makes us unhappy.
Wandering is one thing, but what about when that inner voice doesn't just wander, but gets totally stuck? When one single negative thought just grabs your attention and refuses to let go, pulling you into this downward spiral? That's exactly what we're going to unpack.
So, what is really going on when we feel like we're just mentally stuck in the mud? Well, it's not just you being in your head. It's actually a recognized psychological process. And you guessed it, it has a name.
The scientific term is perseverative thinking. It's basically the mind's tendency to get locked onto negative stuff, worries, problems, past mistakes, without ever really moving towards a solution. You can think of it as the engine that powers both worry about the future and stewing about the past.
Now, it's super important to understand that not all thinking about yourself is bad. There's a huge difference between getting stuck and actually using your thoughts to grow. On the one hand, you've got brooding, which is just passively stewing in negative feelings. But on the other hand, you've got self-reflection, which is all about being curious and learning from what happened. It's the difference between replaying a mistake to beat yourself up versus re-examining it to figure out how to do better next time.
So this perseverative thinking, it's not just some random bad habit. Nope. Scientists have actually developed a model that shows it's a predictable, self-fueling cycle in our brain. And you know what? Understanding how this cycle works is the absolute first step to breaking it.
Okay, let's pop the hood and go inside the machine to see how this vicious cycle actually works. We're going to look at a new 4-part model that explains what's going on in our minds. So the model breaks the whole process down into 4 interacting parts or agencies in our brain. Now, I know the names sound a little technical. Salience detectors, strategy selectors, executive operators, and information representatives, but don't worry, stick with me, we're about to make this really, really simple. Just imagine, your mind is a high-tech control room. Each of these 4 agencies has a specific job to do as part of the crew. When everything's running smoothly, it's great. But when it perceives a threat, that whole room can go into a total lockdown.
First up, you've got these salience detectors. This is your control room's alarm system. It's constantly scanning for anything that might be a problem. An upcoming deadline, a weird look from your boss, a memory of a past failure. And when it finds something, it sounds the alarm.
Okay, the alarm is blaring. So what happens next? The strategy selectors jump into action. These are the mission planners. They look at the threat and pick a response from a whole library of mental strategies. The problem is, for many of us, the default plans our brain has learned are simply worry about it or ruminate on it. These are just the well-worn paths our mind automatically goes down.
Next, the executive operators get their orders. Think of this as the diligent crew of the control room. If the plan is worry, they execute it flawlessly, dedicating all of your focus and all your mental energy to that single problem, pushing pretty much everything else aside.
And this is where the loop closes, and it all gets so vicious. The information representatives are like the giant screens in the control room. They start projecting all the relevant data, replaying past failures, imagining worst-case scenarios, all of which feeds right back to the alarm system, the salience detectors. And what do? They sound the alarm even louder. And the cycle just repeats, stronger than before.
And this is so important to understand. This vicious cycle isn't just happening in your head. It has real, measurable, and pretty damaging physical costs. By constantly re-triggering that alarm, you're keeping your body's stress response switched on. That means an increased heart rate, higher blood pressure, and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol. Over time, this can actually weaken your immune system and decrease your heart rate variability, which is a key marker of your overall health.
And if that wasn't enough, there's another sneaky effect happening here. Every single time you run through that negative loop, you're not just remembering the event, you're actively rewriting it in your brain. It's a process called memory reconsolidation, and it basically strengthens the negative emotions tied to that memory, making it feel even worse the next time you think about it.
To see just how high the stakes can be with this stuff, let's look at a powerful real-world example of this cycle in total overdrive: perfectionism.
This quote absolutely nails it. For a perfectionist, the internal struggle isn't just about meeting high standards, it's about maintaining a flawless image for the outside world, often while hiding intense psychological pain behind that perfect mask. So, this need to seem perfect, combined with that intense self-critical rumination we just talked about, creates a really dangerous cocktail. Perfectionists often suffer in total silence, seeing any mistake as a complete catastrophe and believing they have to solve all their problems alone. Tragically, this can put them at a much higher risk of self-harm when they're facing intense stress.
This slide shows why it can be so hard to see when a perfectionist is in crisis. On the one hand, you have the obvious warning sign, someone who is clearly in a lot of pain. But then, on the other hand, you have the hidden, and sometimes way more dangerous warning sign, the perfectionist who's under immense stress but seems to be handling it flawlessly. That perfect exterior can be a mask for a really severe internal crisis.
Okay, I know that was heavy, but here's the good news. The whole reason we deconstructed that mental control room is because if we know how the machine works, we know how to fix it. This model literally gives us a roadmap for how to start rewiring these destructive patterns.
Now this is where it all clicks together, and this is so cool. This shows how proven therapies connect directly to our control room model. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, helps retrain the crew, the executive operators, to challenge and correct those negative thoughts. Metacognitive therapy goes a level higher, targeting the mission planners, the strategy selectors, by changing your beliefs about worry itself. Mindfulness helps quiet the screen projectors, and exposure therapy works to recalibrate the alarm system. See, there's a tool for each part of the machine.
And look, you don't have to be in therapy to start making these changes. These are strategies anyone can start using. Cultivating self-compassion is a direct antidote to that harsh inner critic. Shifting your mindset from seeing yourself as defective to seeing yourself as learning and growing can change everything. And maybe most importantly, learning that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
So we've seen that these thought loops are powerful, they're predictable, and yeah, they can sometimes be dangerous. But they are not invincible. By understanding the cycle, we get the power to step in and make a change. So the real question left for all of us is, now that you know how the cycle works, how will you choose to break it?